And so I'll start with this. So a lot of times when I give this, I've given it to the kids. We work with 4th and 5th grade. Sometimes I get emotional when I tell the story, right? And sometimes I cry. It's hard to hold it back. So, I know you said I'm a big intimidating guy, and if I cry, that's all right. And if you think I'm soft, we can wrestle after, right? So, you guys call it how you want to see it, right? So if you don't know, McKenna is my daughter. You guys know McKenna, right? Cody's my son. My wife's sitting behind McKenna. She's a big part of my testimony. So yeah, I'm just going to jump in. Yeah, and like Kevin said, I don't make it here. I've been here a few times on Thursday. I've come. I've brought some people a few times, but I do try to go to the jails on Saturday. I try to make it there at least a couple times a month with that crowd. So yeah, some of you, Paul, I've seen Paul. It's good to see you on this side. All right. But I'm going to read a couple of verses before I start, and they're going to make sense to you as I go through my testimony. Genesis 1:26 and 27, it says, "And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." 27 says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them." Genesis 2:4 says, "These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens." So my story, I'm not from Ohio. I was born in, everybody remember Joplin, Missouri, where the tornado went through? That big tornado? That hospital that got destroyed, I was born in that hospital. So I'm from a really small rural town in southwest Missouri. My mom was 16 years old when she delivered me. I didn't meet my real dad till I was 18. He was married with 3 children. So, you can understand that wasn't a real good situation, right? She missed her junior year of high school. She graduated on time. She'd left for college with me in tow. I can remember from the earliest age just being kind of alone. She was at school full time, working 3 jobs, and I can remember memories of being in class and just kind of like from a very early age. I'm a true Gen X latchkey kid, right? Where I had to just be alone a lot from the very beginning. Well, you go back to college and she's there. Her older sister was a little bit ahead of her. And she met a gentleman there at college who is currently her husband and my stepdad. There was a large 6'5" black guy that was playing basketball in southern Missouri, and that's who she met and started to date and fell in love with. And so from the earliest age that I can remember, he was always in the picture. I like to joke and tell everybody I'm quarter black. All right? I used to have a lot better moves and could, do stuff, but as far as I know, when I grew up, I just grew up, that was normal. I didn't know any different. Because from the time I was 1 or 2, he was just always around. They got married when I was 5. Southwest Missouri was not a great place for a mixed couple. And, 1975 or whatever it was, 76. Her family was very much not on board. And I was really close with my grandparents at an early age because it was a family of 5. The youngest was only 9 when I was born, so I was really more like a 6th kid than a grandkid. Like I was kind of an odd duck out, right? So I was really close to them. They did not like the relationship that my mom was in. I can remember all of my early years, I didn't realize it then, but they were just flat out racist about it, right? They didn't like it. They showed mom respect and they let it happen, but subtly on the backside, they would always just kind of pull me to their camp, right? Like, I didn't know. So we moved. So he was from Pittsburgh. Where's my Pittsburgh man at? There we go. So you got to imagine, I'm in a small rural town. I'm barefoot in overalls, and then we moved to McKeesport. You know where McKeesport is? So we moved to McKeesport. I went to Centennial in 1st grade. So ringing a bell? So I went from all white to, I think there was 3 white kids in the entire 1st grade, or the entire elementary school, not just 1st grade. So culture shock, right? Big change. I remember running around the projects. I mean, when the projects were safe enough to run around where you could just kind of fight your way out of it, I wouldn't go back now. But life was just, I didn't know any different at that early age, right? Nothing seems odd at that point. I just think it's normal. But as you start to age, you do feel different, right? I start to encounter what that's like. And so you got to remember, my parents are really young. My mom was only 16 when she had me. My dad was not much older, my stepdad. He was only like 4 years older. So they were still kids themselves, right? They worked hard. They also partied. It's the 70s. We eventually moved out of that first year. We moved to the suburbs. And so then life starts to get a little different. I mean, I grew up in a trailer park. I grew up in the poor part of town, right? My parents worked. They had jobs. We just chose to do that. They didn't want to spend a bunch of money on a house. Interest rates were, 20% back then. So I grew up in a poor part of town. So I was black dad, and I'm growing up in a trailer park. So I'm already kind of on the outside looking in, right? Life starts to get different, along the way. You start realizing, one of the favorite things I would do is, you start making friends at school, right? I played sports, I did stuff. And then as a kid, you meet the other parents, and then that first time you introduce, because I called him Dad. I said, hey, it's my mom and Dad. And then you see that look on their face. I used to have fun with that. I would go, it's my stepmom. I thought it was fun. Like, it didn't really bother me for a while. But after a while, it's not fun being the guy that doesn't fit in. All of a sudden now, those friends, you can't go to the house. You didn't get invited to the birthday party. That stuff starts being real, right? So for me, my parents had at that point, they just weren't going to church. They were both saved at an early age, but they had walked away from that, and that's not the life they were living at this time. My mom had a bad experience. My dad just wasn't going. We would go every once in a while. My dad would take us back into McKeesport, and I would go to an all-black church. Talk about feeling weird again. I'm the only white guy, me and my mom. Anybody seen the Blues Brothers? When Jim Belushi gets out? That's the kind of church we went to. I didn't know what was going on. There was no kids ministry. I'm sure somewhere along the way they said the gospel. I didn't hear it because I was too busy watching what was going on, right? I never heard it. You already feel out of place. So, we would go, then we wouldn't go. And then I'd just be mad, why are we getting up on Sunday and going to church? So I didn't understand it. About 12 years of age in my life, life gets hard, right? As a kid, it's not that hard, but when you feel like you're an outcast. So you got to remember, too, but this time, by the time I was in 5th grade, I was doing drugs. I had access to drugs. Most people start drinking. I started right off the rip with pot and speed. I could get my hands on speed. I could get my hands on pot. By 5th grade, I was getting high. By 7th grade, I was drinking 4 or 5 nights a week, every day. I remember being out in the woods, having to dig holes and bury the beer so it wouldn't freeze, right? Just stupid stuff. But that was just the crowd I ran with. My parents being young, they ran with, so like I'm in 5th grade running around with the high school kids because that's who was hanging out with my mom and dad. Dad was playing basketball and hanging with the guys. I thought it was cool. I don't realize that I'm going down a bad path, right? But I can remember being 12. So I was born in Missouri, right? So I'm going to back up. Anybody know what the state motto of Missouri is? Show me state, right? My grandfather would point that in my head all the time. So I love to argue. You got to prove it to me, right? So I can remember laying in bed as a 12-year-old, and I don't remember why life was hard at that time, what was specifically the issue. But I can remember laying in bed. This was probably a couple of nights, begging God, because I just wanted to know, is God real? I've heard about God. I go to church every once in a while. Just show me. And I would lay in bed, and I remember laying there like as sincerely as I could lay there and ask, talking out loud, if you're real, just make the wind blow. And I'll believe. Not once did the wind blow. Okay, tonight, make it rain. Like it's not raining right now, just make it rain, and then I'll believe. Because I want to believe, but you got to show me. God never did it, right? I can remember laying in that bed. This is where I get, and saying, okay, angry. You're not going to answer me, and I'm sincerely asking. I mean, I'm begging you to show me. I'm done. I don't know what the answer is, but that ain't it. I'm checking that one off the list, and I'm going to stop worrying about it. That is the dangerous place to be. Now there's no God to answer to. So the only thing left is this life, right? I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to live this life to its fullest. I'm going to do whatever I want to do, how I want to do it, and it's going to be about having fun. Thankfully, my parents at least had a really good work ethic, so I did learn that. But it was about partying. So from that point on, I was just going to have a good time, whatever that meant. I'm running with the high school kids. I mean, we're stealing stuff. I mean, I remember going across the street and robbing to get stuff, to get money, because, you know, mom and dad only had lunch money. $5 doesn't buy that much beer and weed. You got to start hustling for money, right? You know? So whatever it took, that was my high school years, my junior high, my high school years. I was just done worrying about it. God was just off the list. I say that, but there was still part of me that was hoping there was a better answer, right? Because that's not a fulfilling life. At that point, I hadn't seen anybody die. Now we're starting to get in the late 80s, so now crack's coming around. The drugs are getting different, right? Oxycontin's getting big. Things are different, right? Up to that point, it was just a little cocaine, a little weed, some speed. You know, you can live, you can function, everything's okay, right? Now I'm starting to see people really have their lives get turned upside down, lose everything. So there's got to be something better, right? So I graduate at 17, and I move out. Not because home was bad. My parents weren't bad parents in any way. I don't want them to sound like bad people. They worked hard. They tried to provide. And I left. I went to college. I said, all right, I'm going to go to college. That is not a great environment. All right? I mean, I don't know that I was sober for, you know, at least a year and a half. I mean, not one day, right, in one fashion or another. For whatever reason, not long after I got to school, I meet Shawnee, McKenna's mom. A blind date. A friend of mine across the hall, he ends up marrying the girl, but she lives across the hall from her. Invites her along. We're going to a frat party. So my first time I meet her, we're at a frat house. Shawnee can probably attest to it. I don't know. I'm blind drunk by the end of the night. But I was a gentleman, so she says. You know, I wasn't inappropriate. And so, and maybe I was way cuter back then too. I don't know. But she was willing to see me again. All right? We started having a relationship of just starting to get to know each other. Well, my wife grew up in a Christian school, saved at a young age, right? Was at college. She had a relationship with the Lord. She maybe wasn't walking as close with the Lord at that time as she wanted to be, but she had a foundation. And she knew that, okay, hey, if I'm going to hang out with this guy, I want to know what he thinks about the Lord. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but she asked me about it. I was sure ready to tell her, there's no God. Call me whatever you want to call me, agnostic, atheist, but there's no God. To this day, I'm so thankful that she just didn't turn and run and say, well, I'm done with that, Yahoo. Right? She shared the good news. It didn't hurt that she was pretty hot. That helped. That helped a lot, right? Still is. But I wanted to hear, because there was still that little part of me, right, that knew there had to be something else. But for the first time, I heard the gospel. I heard the good news. I heard that I was a sinner, that there was a way to be redeemed, that there was a person who, God himself came down incarnate and gave his life for me, for my sin, and that if I would, I heard that. I remember her and her best friend started praying for me. I don't realize it. She wanted to give me a book to read. She's talking to me. I'm listening. She invites me to church. I can still remember being in Sunday school, raising my hand, interrupting class. Because for the first time, I'm hearing like life, right? I'm hearing something I've never heard before in my life. And they're talking, and I'm like, oh, What's that? Like, I'm interrupted him. Like, you don't go to Sunday school and interrupt the guy teaching, right? I wanted to hear more. I was hungry. But I'm also still at college living like an idiot, right? But she woke something in me, a desire to know more. Well, guess what I did? I failed out of college, right? I didn't go to class, not once. I would go the first day and get a syllabus. All right, paper due in a month. I'll turn that in a month and see you later. And I didn't go to class. I didn't go to one class. I think I went to 3 classes my first year, like 3 times. That was it. I was getting home at 5 in the morning, not going to class. I failed out. I was all cocky. I remember going in the dean's office. I paid for this. I'm an adult. I passed all those. It doesn't work that way, son. You got to take a year off. So now I'm like, all right, now what am I going to do? I'm not going back home. I'll enlist in the Marine Corps. That'll be a great idea. That was my answer, right? Well, that's what I'll do. I'll go to the Marine Corps. So now this is Desert Storm. I'm getting ready to go to the Gulf. Like it's first one. I figured that was just going to fix everything. So I left. I go to boot camp. But for the first time, what I had never really been faced with up until that point was my mortality. At 18, man, you're going to live forever. You know how far away 53 years old is how old I am now? It's so far away. But at 18, I didn't think about any of that stuff. Well, now I'm laying in a barracks thinking like, hey, in a couple months, I might be dead. Like, there's a real good chance. All those things I'd heard, all that good news, like what I needed to do to be right with my Maker, I did, laying in a bunk in Parris Island, South Carolina, all by myself. Nobody to share it with. I had to write a letter back to Shawnee. Hey, guess what? I got saved. What was I going to do? Tell my drill instructor? Hey, DI, guess what? So, like, who do I share that with, right? Some of you in this room, you remember getting saved, how that felt, right? Do it alone when you're sitting there. And, yeah, it felt different, but, like, who do I share that with? So, long story short, I was halfway in there in training. I got hurt, was laid up for a long time. They gave me 2 options. Stay for another 8 weeks and then finish another round of training, or go home and start over. I said, give me my stuff. I'll go home. I didn't go back. I went home. So I didn't finish. I had an entry-level separation from boot camp. Came home, got a job, moved back into college. I'm saved, but now what? What am I doing with that? Well, I went back to college, got a job thinking, well, I just got to finish a little time so I can go back to school again another year. Now, she's ahead of me in school. She worked hard, got out early. She'd actually, by the time I went back to school that second year, she was home doing some student teaching. So she wasn't at college with me that year. But we get back around our old friends. They weren't going to church. They weren't talking to me about the Lord. That next year back in school, I just went right back to the same old stuff. What did I know? Well, I didn't know anything better. I didn't grow. Wasn't doing anything about it. I even talked about our steps of growth, right? So I had my fire insurance. I gave my life to Christ. I knew when I died I wasn't going to be judged for my sin. But nothing about my life changed at that point. I just went back to school. I just went back to drinking, partying, running around like a goofball. Guess what? I failed out of school again. Now I got to wait a whole nother year. Well, I ain't going back to the Marine Corps. Did that thing. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just checking time, Kevin. I don't want to. Good, okay. So, I didn't live far from the college, or my parents didn't live far from the college. So, like I said, I felt out again. At this point, I've lost a friend or two. They've already OD'd or passed away. I know I need a change. Like, I can't keep doing this path. This is not going to be good. I just went home to visit, and my parents were like, oh, hey, by the way, we're moving. I'm like, oh, cool, where are you moving to? Kansas City. I'm like, oh, well, you're going to tell me? Oh, yeah, we just did. Oh, great. This is like April, and they're moving that summer. I'm not going to stay. There's nothing for me to stay, right? There's nothing there left for me. I know where that path is going to take me. I need the reset. I need new friends. I need a new path. I had an uncle that was working construction. I knew I could get a job. She had graduated as a teaching degree and hadn't started teaching anywhere. By this point, we'd dated for a couple of years. I asked her to move with me. I said, would you give Kansas City a shot? You know, and what's the worst case? You can come home. I honestly thought when I left, I'd come back to Pennsylvania, where you grow up's home, right? I just wanted to get away so I could get myself right. And then I figured I'd bring her back home to her family. You know, we'd come back. She had some conditions, like we're going to get in church, like we're going to do things the right way. Yeah, absolutely, I need that. And there was part of me that wanted to do that. I needed that. So I'm glad she came. We moved to Kansas City in 92, summer of 92. I started working construction. It took us about a year. We tried churches. We were going like every Sunday trying to find a home. I came home from construction one night where I had seen the church I was overworking by. And it's the craziest thing that I'm even here, right? So I see it. She saw an ad because they were getting ready to have like their 3rd anniversary. And she's like, hey, I got a church. Yeah, me too. And we had the same church. We're like, yep, that's the place. We showed up that Sunday. I mean, and right away we're looking at each other like, this is where God wants us. So we became members. We joined. We weren't married. We were living together. And they just automatically assumed we were married because we came to church together every Sunday, you know. And then pretty soon it was like, yeah, we're not married. We got married in 94, but what we did is we got plugged in. They had discipleship. We started that path. We went to discipleship. We were faithfully going to church. We started serving. I mean, I watched 2-year-old kids for 6 years at night church on Sunday. We just got involved. I mean, pretty quick they were plugging you into ministry, like being involved, doing something, growing and serving the Lord. And so my life started to change. Now I had something to live for that was more than myself, right? God actually could use me in a way. And we faithfully served there for 18 years with Pastor Troy's parents. Never met Troy. Pastor Troy that preaches on Sunday mornings, his parents were sent out to, from Kansas City to this little church to start that. So I knew Gene and Brenda for a long time. And it's crazy that I'm here in Ohio now with their son. All right? That's not happenstance. But I remember serving the Lord, growing, disciple. I got baptized. I'm like, whoa, going through the lessons, like I need to do that. And I think one time as a kid they might have dunked me. I don't remember it. I don't know why, but I mean, so I knew that, hey, I need to get baptized. That's what the Lord tells me to do. But where you get plugged in, I can still remember distinctly, like really the first time my faith grew. Because I'm going to read another verse. Hebrews 11:3. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. For me to believe God was real, the Bible says it's the foolishness of preaching that men get saved. We don't see miracles and stuff like that. It's up to us to share the good news that we've got, right? I lived 18 years on this earth and nobody told me it until I met her. And I was on a path of destruction. What would another 5 years, 10 years, if I would have survived? I got arrested when I was 17. If I'd have made another 5 or 10 years, how hard would my heart been? Would I have listened by that point? I mean, I live in this country and I went 18 years and nobody told me the good news until I met her. I didn't take it right away, but she planted the seed, and when it was time, I accepted it. It was faith. I knew that there had to be more. I mean, we didn't crawl out of an ocean somewhere and start growing legs and walking. There's a creator, right? And it was faith. But where my faith grew for the very first time was right before McKenna was born. We're serving. We're going to church. Neither one of us have great jobs. She was working full time at the time. We're getting ready to have a kid. And we're faithful, right? We've been in church. We're doing the things we're supposed to do. I think maybe we're giving $100 at that time. Like we're tithing. We're giving money to the Lord. And then this is a time when the budget is tight. Like you do the math. We had to choose whether or not you got a haircut or if I was hustling a side job in order to have the extra money, because the money coming in went out the door. There was nothing left over. And she was going to quit working when McKenna was born, at least not full time. And I'm looking at this budget thinking, there's no way. Like, I got to pay the mortgage. I got to put gas in the car. Got to buy food. The bills are X. I can't give that $100. God's not going to miss it. That's a hard fight, right? And I remember we talked about it and we said, no. God says trust him. And he'll provide. We made sure we gave that money. And not once did we not make a payment. The car didn't break down. The washing machine didn't break down. We got money in the mail. We got rebates. And I'm telling you, the math don't math. It didn't work. Spreadsheet did not math out. But I paid my bills when I honored God and did that. That's when your faith starts to grow, right? Put God to the test. I mean, I can remember that distinctly as one of the first times that my faith actually grew. And then from that point, you just keep serving. And I mean, there's countless things where God's come through in our lives. And I've been saved now 34 years. Have I been perfect? Absolutely not. But I've got some pretty good faith right now. It'd be pretty hard to shake this from me. Because when I was faithful, he was faithful. When I walked in newness of life, it says, right? Because when I got saved, I did not walk in newness of life. I lived the same old life. Some of us need to lose our friends. Because they're just going to keep dragging you down that same old path. The places you go, the things you do. My life didn't change till I changed those things. That's when it started to change, and that's when God could use me, and that's when I was faithful, and when I did the things I was supposed to do. My parents, we got involved in church, so I'm the oldest, the youngest, and an only child, right? So remember, my real dad's got 3 kids. I met 2 of them at his funeral. I did meet him when I was 18. And then my stepdad and my mom had 2 kids, so they're younger. But I'm the only one of my mom and dad. Well, we got plugged in church. They're still in school. They're younger. Guess what? We started taking them to church. They're both saved. They started coming. Little by little, the walls get knocked down. Guess now Dad's coming. Now Dad's coming to church and getting plugged in. Mom held out a little bit longer, but now Mom's coming. Next thing you know, the whole family's coming. And I can tell you today, some of the hardships that they've been through in their lives, what are they celebrating? I don't know, 48 years of marriage this November. All right, 45, I don't know, I can't do the math. Cut me off. Subtract 5 from my age, in 54, so whatever that is. They're both serving faithfully in church. My dad's a deacon. They have an adult Sunday school class and have been for a long time now, because they started walking back with the Lord and doing the things that they were supposed to do. And the Lord's blessing them in their lives. But it all starts for me with just having faith. And man, somebody taking the time to share with me. Where would I have been if she wouldn't have shared with me? Would I be standing here right now? I doubt it. I really do. If I wouldn't be incarcerated, I'd be dead. I know for a fact. Because when there's no God, that's a dark place. And so in 2018, we found our way to Ohio. It's the only church we checked out. And I remember sitting in there on a Sunday morning and they're introducing Troy Stogsdale, and I'm thinking, nah, can't be. Stogsdale? Like, I'd never met Troy. He was an adult. I knew his parents, but I never met him. And I knew God had us in a place we were supposed to be at this time of our life. So we've been here since 2018. Pretty quickly thereafter, we started serving with the 4th and 5th grade. We teach the 4th and 5th grade Sunday school class, or church time. My daughter's here, thankfully back home with us and in Ohio now, and we are somewhat a part of New Beginnings. If I encourage you, man, just be faithful. Start walking in newness of life. Do the path of growth. Read God's Word. Right? Trust. God's never going to let you down. Start letting your faith grow a little bit. Let God come through for you. Changes your life.